Welcome to Stitchery Stories, where textile artists share their life in fabric and thread, inspiration, techniques, disasters and delights. And I'm Susan Reeks, enthusiastic embroiderer and textile art dabbler who also loves podcasting. So take a break and enjoy our light-hearted chat, and please share with your friends so they can enjoy it too. Hello and welcome to our lovely guest today, Jessica Grady. Hi Jessica.
Hello, Sue.
Hiya. Jessica is an embroidery artist originally from the North Yorkshire coast. Her colourful and contemporary work has been exhibited in various galleries across the UK. Jessica's textiles are a tactile exploration of bold colour and intricate patterns through hand stitching and unusual embellishments. Her designs are a visual feast for the viewer, encouraging curiosity. And the first thing I would just like to say is the best place to go and find out about Jessica is on her website, jessicagrady.co.uk, and all of her links and social media stuff are all on the show notes for this episode, so you'll find all her links there. And if you've even spotted any of Jessica's work, you will definitely know that it's colourful and tactile and bold, and it really does stand out as being very original. So I absolutely love your work, Jessica.
Thank you.
And as we were just saying, we've been following each other on Instagram and so forth, but you've got quite a few fans as well. So I've had people writing in asking for you to be on this show, which I thought was lovely, actually. So
it's a lovely compliment. Very nice compliment.
So there we are. So before we get further on with your Stitchery story, would you like to share with us what you're working on at the moment, Jessica, and what's got you excited?
So at the moment, because I've just finished a big show that I did in York, I'm starting a new collection, which is always an iffy thing because it's quite fun, but also I've got a lot of experimenting to do. So it depends how well that goes as to how fast the collection goes. So basically, I'm doing a piece inspired by corals. I think I've been watching too much David Attenborough. I started watching The New Blue Planet.
Oh, but the colours and the shapes, it's just wonderful anyway. So that's a really good place to start for being inspired by. Lovely.
Yes, so obviously I've been looking at the shapes and the textures. I mean, my work is quite abstract in a way. I don't tend to do anything that's completely replicating something else. I normally give it a bit of a tweak to make it more of a pattern or something that's about the colour and the texture.
Yes.
So that's what I'm trying to sort of explore with the corals. And I mean, a lot of my work is framed, but these pieces I'm exploring an idea of making something more sculptural. So I've been looking at putting pieces under like glass cloches to make little almost organisms in their own.
Oh, right.
So that's just a bit of an experimenting to see how that's going to go together, whether I have to stuff it or whether I have to put it over a mould. But that will allow me to have a really three-dimensional piece, because obviously that can be sometimes limited by framing, or otherwise the prices are extortionate, which I've discovered very recently.
Yes.
But it's just you get to a point where if you do decide to do it, I don't know, I mean, current pieces I've framed something that's about 9 centimetres deep. That requires 2 frames back to back, custom made in order to fit in. So
yes, it gets complicated and therefore expensive, doesn't it? So that's always a challenge I feel with the 3-dimensional work, is how are you going to display it and look after it as well. So but that's a good idea. And also with the coral idea, that's what they're like anyway. They are 3-dimensional, they are lumpy, they are bumpy, they are intricate. So that'll be really interesting to see what grows out of that. So good one on there. So obviously that's fairly exciting. Anything else that you're kind of working on, or is it you're working on that collection and that's your focus?
I mean, that's my collection. To be honest, it's at the moment I'm finding most of my day is spent by admin. Emailing people, applying for stuff, filling in different applications and editing my photography and doing all my website, and that takes up more time than I think everybody realizes it does. So the actual making time is then limited.
And that is the story of business in general and online business in general. You know, I make my living from running an online business, and Yes, the marketing and the creation and the writing of the blog posts, and even this podcast, I can reckon it takes me at least 8 hours a week. That's a whole day out of my working day gone on producing this. So it does take a massive amount of time, but it's part of doing that business. If we don't do it, then you don't have a business. So
exactly, it feeds everything else as well.
It totally does.
One thing I'm applying for at the moment is quite a few residency opportunities sort of all over the country, and I've even applied for some abroad, which most of them are sort of for next summertime, but it's just to have that period of reflection of just solid making for a month or 2 months.
Yes.
So that would be something I would really love to do, hopefully next year, but we'll see.
And the other thing that I spotted when I've been looking on your website is all the opportunities that you already have had on there. So you've been featured in the Workbox magazine and a piece in Stitch magazine and various other interviews and so forth. And I was quite intrigued, I have to say, by a couple of French appearances by on French blogs and so on. So how did that happen?
Oh, right, yes. The French one is an interesting story, but shows the power of social media in my eyes. So obviously I share a lot of my work on different Facebook groups, most of which have a lot of people from all over the world. So it's great for connecting with different people. So anyway, I shared a post maybe about a year ago now on there of a piece that I'd done. And from that, it was picked up by a French woman who has an artist blog or website or something, and she'd done a feature on me as this artist of the day on this French website, which I knew nothing about. I was completely
she never even said she'd done it. That's what I've seen,
But then I only knew about it because then maybe in January this year, I got an email from an editor of a French quilting magazine who said they'd seen this blog post and invited me to do a show in France, which was in April this year. So it was just incredible how that equated to that opportunity. And, it was amazing. Basically, it was like it was called the International Festival of Threads, which was in Nantes.
Right.
Which to me was the equivalent of the French knitting and stitching show, so it was a big one.
Fantastic. Nantes is a lovely place as well. I mean, I lived in France for 7 years, and Nantes was about 2.5, 3 hours away. So, but it's a lovely, lovely place as well. So that's fantastic, and it just goes to show you never know when you make that little posting of that picture, or you've made the effort to share something about what you're doing. You never know who's going to pick it up and who's going to see it and what's going to happen next. When we had that with the episode with Heather about the Battle of Stamford Bridge, we were picked up by Mary Corbett, Needle and Threads in America, massive blog.
And
she'd featured that, and it's like, wow, listens spiked. I had about 400 extra listens over the weekend than what I expected. It was like, wow, how had that happened? It was brilliant. So you always just share your stuff, because you don't ever know where it's going to go.
You should never be, I know a lot of people are a bit and ahhing and almost a bit frightened of sharing stuff because what will people think? Well, I've got to the point, I think I don't care. I'm putting it out there anyway.
It just, if we worry about what will people think, we'll never do a damn thing, will we? I couldn't do that. What will people think? I'm running a podcast. Well, actually, what people think is they're really interested and they're really happy I'm doing it. So, you've just got to get over that and just don't care and go for it. So, fab. Now, how did you actually get interested in embroidery and textile art, Jessica? Who taught you and what did you do?
I've always been artistic. I've always been creative in some way or another, even as a child. And when I was very small, it was my great auntie, actually. She was a watercolour painter, and she also did embroidery.
Yes.
She would draw these floral patterns on tablecloths and things and then give them to me and show me how to stitch them.
Right.
So she sort of spiked my interest. And then I did, little bits at school. And then obviously I decided to do my textiles degree. But it was just the idea of, I hated doing anything that was flat. I just had this hatred towards flat things. So I had to do something with a bit of texture on. The textiles, is the perfect solution really to that. So.
Yes. And then, of course, you've extended that by all the wild and wonderful things that you're putting on yours, like bits of sponges I've spotted on there and washing up sponges and all sorts of things on there. So.
So I think I'm just slightly mad. That's probably what it is.
Well, I actually think it's a really good use of materials like that, especially when you can create things out of something else. That's really great. In fact, you know what? I'll have to get my son involved in something like that, because he's like a womble. He goes around picking all these bits and pieces up, and then like I find them in his bedroom. I think, what are you going to do? I'm going to make something with that, Mum. Okay.
It's a good viewpoint to have. Well, to be honest, and again, with all this at the moment about being aware of the environment, etc.,
Yes.
and because the textiles industry is such a wasteful industry in general, it's just giving something back, and the idea that you can recycle something and turn it into something beautiful, nobody would have any idea what its original, form was, because you then manipulate and transform it, and it becomes, I say I make my own sequins. I make sequins out of everything. So if I can melt a plastic bag, layer it up with some printing medium or something, and then punch it out and fold it into sequin, everyone would never think.
No, and it makes an interesting one as well. You get that. I've seen some of the other examples where I said, "I just made another batch of sequins." I think, wow, that in itself must take a lot of patience.
Well, it does. It all adds to the time, and obviously the input of then pricing a piece of work can be quite difficult, because you really have to think how many hours you've spent. And if I've spent 20 hours making sequins and then 100 hours sewing something together and it's an original, then you have to reflect that in the pricing.
Exactly, yes, and that's the same with anything that a lot of personal time has gone into it. It is how you reflect. People need to move away from the idea that something is valued in terms of how long it has taken. It's the artistry and the imagination and the skill, and that is basically what you're paying for, not physically, really, how long somebody has sat and done something. And that's, I think, a strange thing for you to get your head round as well. It's something that I have to do as well when I'm pricing up things. It's not necessarily how long it's going to take me. It's all of those skills that I've developed over all of those years that mean that I can execute that particular task and provide advice. So it's a different way of pricing, isn't it? It's not easy. Nobody ever said it was easy.
No, and it can be difficult. And, there's always the case where if I like something, I tend to price it higher because I don't want to let go of it.
You don't want anyone to buy it. Oh, dear me. After you did your textiles degree, did you just move into self-employment at that point?
Not initially. I mean, I did a lot of internships, to be perfectly honest, after I first graduated in different, mostly sort of textile design and in fashion. Then I sort of went into freelance design and freelance embroidery swatching. So I did a lot of, I used to sell the copyright to embroidery designs that then would be taken to New York or Italy or wherever.
Right.
And then they would, the agent would then sell the copyright to that design to, say, a big company like Zara or H&M. And really take that. But, it's not, obviously, if you do that, nobody ever knows it's yours. You can't ever say it was yours. You can't ever show it's yours because you sell the copyright.
Yes, exactly.
So, and you don't even know half the time who actually buys it, which is another frustrating thing.
Yes, I can imagine that being a very frustrating thing. So it's a way to start, isn't it? And a way to start earning some money. But as you say, ultimately, very frustrating, I should imagine.
And obviously I have to be more traditional in terms of my style than what I really want to do. So I've always done my own stuff on the side as well, but I just decided that actually I would be much happier and much more successful in a way of doing it my own, because it just gets all my personality across as well. So.
Yes, brilliant. And what, therefore, would you say have been your major inspirations over the years and currently as well, Jessica?
I mean, Michael Brennan-Wood is a huge inspiration. I absolutely love his textile work. And I remember in university we had a talk by Karen Nicol.
Right.
Embroidery, I think, is absolutely stunning. And she was sort of quite inspiring in terms of looking at alternative things to make embellishment.
Right. So that set you off on that track then?
Yeah, because she does a lot of things. She's always going to jumble sales and car boots and picking up bits.
Yeah.
And so that sort of got me going on, that could be, you don't have to think of the norm. And there's also a lot of amazing embroidery artists on Instagram. Liz Payne's an Australian woman who makes the most fantastically bright and colourful work. So that's and there's also another woman on Instagram. I can't remember what her actual name is, but she makes these huge woven tapestries, which are just absolutely full of texture and colour. I think she's from Spain. I think she's Spanish.
Right. Yeah, I'll have to go and follow a few of those as well, because it's wonderful, isn't it? You can just get lost in Instagram, just like
so much inspiration. Just type something in and it all pops up. So
yeah, fantastic. And you kind of mentioned about your techniques that you've been developing. So what are your favourite techniques, Jessica? And why do you like them so much?
I originally made my own sequins and beads because I didn't like what I could find, and I found the selection was quite limited unless you bought them from India or somewhere and got them shipped in, which isn't really a very viable option.
No.
So I mean, I love washers. Washers are my absolute favourite because you can get them in any size, shape, material, you name it. I've bought them. I dye them, I paint them, I use printing medium on them, I foil them, I do everything. So it's quite. And for sequins, obviously, again, if you use metal ones, they affect the weight of the fabric. So you have to think about that as well in terms of how fabric then will drape. I made quite a few wall hangings actually for my degree show with all these metal washers on.
Yes.
And it completely altered how the fabric fell.
Yes.
Which was really lovely to actually hold. But recently, one of my favourite new materials, I suppose, is cotton buds.
Yeah.
So the sort of Q-tips that you get, I snip off the ends and dye them, and they dye fantastically in just synthetic plastic dyes.
Yeah.
And I use them as my own sort of beads.
Right.
Cut them up, they're really light. I started using them because they were a little bit wider than your traditional sort of bugle beads.
Yes.
Which I find so annoying when you're doing a piece, then suddenly you have to switch needles and get your bead and thread out and all that.
Start poking about, yes.
Yeah, so really I'm probably a bit lazy. I've decided to do my own shortcuts.
Well, what do they say? Necessity is the mother of invention. There you are.
I also, I like scrap stores a lot.
Yes.
There's one near me in Leeds, in a big old mill, which is absolutely stuffed to the roof with materials. And
brilliant.
I don't know where they've come from, but I got a bag of these felt washers, which apparently were off some sort of industrial machinery. That's what I was told.
Yes.
Anyway, they're so they're a gorgeous colour, and the fact that they're felt means they're lighter weight.
Yes, and you
so
can
I did quite a few pieces recently that were just absolutely encrusted in these sort of felt washers that were then topped with other things, and I'm now sort of figuring out processes on how I can colour them differently and change them. So yeah, that's a recent one that I'm sort of drawn to.
And when you're saying washers, do you mean just the metal washers you can get in B&Q and places like that? Or
yeah, I've actually found, because obviously metal ones can be quite pricey.
Yes.
But I went to Wilkinson's the other day and they have a pick and mix bar for washers. I was so excited. You can pick as many as you want to fit in this little bag, and it's about £3 or something, so they're great.
And that's always a challenge, isn't it? How many can you cram in that bag? I used to do that with screws and nails when I was in France when we were doing DIY. It's like, right, how many can I cram in this bag? More than the shop expects, I'm sure.
Yeah, probably. It weighs my bag down a bit coming back from the shop, but then I can get painting them straight away, so no, it's good.
Yeah, and a previous guest, Chris Gray, she was highlighting the excitement of going to B&Q and looking at all the different things that you can use in a different way to enhance textile art and embroidery. So yeah, it's a growing trend. Get yourself down to the hardware shop and the recyclers.
Yeah, definitely.
What would you say has been the high point so far of your textile art and embroidery journey, Jessica? I've spotted quite a few articles and interviews and so on, but what would be the highlight, would you say?
So I had my article in Workbox magazine, which was out a few months ago now. It must have been not this issue, but the one before. And I actually submitted that as an idea to the editor last November.
Right.
So, it's been a long time coming.
Yes.
And I only thought it would be a tiny little thing at the beginning.
Yeah.
And then when I actually got the magazine and saw it was 4 whole pages, I felt like I was famous.
Wow, yes! I can imagine the happy dance going on.
Oh, it was so lovely just to see your actual work in print. It's different from seeing it on a computer screen. It's
Yes.
sort of more tangible. You can, really feel it.
It's real life, isn't it?
Yeah, and the fact that, I knew so many people were going to read it, and then I got so many lovely responses from it and different opportunities. So it really does start sort of like a trickle-down effect almost with stuff that then happens because of that one moment. So
yes. And that goes back round to what we were saying a few moments ago about the time and effort it takes to find opportunities, follow them up, come up with ideas and pitch those ideas to the different magazines. And I suppose the other side of the coin is they're also always looking for content too. So I always think you're also kind of doing them a favour by pitching your ideas, because it's helping them fill their magazine, even with like local news particularly. Local news always want people
interested in anyone new or anything that is new, because they can't recycle the same stuff over and over and over again.
Yes.
So I always think, look, I'd rather be that annoying person who emails everyone than just disappears and doesn't do anything. I'm always doing that. Everyone must think I'm extremely irritating, but no, I'm a believer that if you want something, you just keep asking and asking and asking, and eventually it will happen.
Yeah, and that's paying off, because see, you've had that lovely 4-page spread in Workbox magazine already, so that's a really great achievement.
Proactive, that you cannot be an artist and not be proactive. Things, otherwise you just won't succeed, because opportunities don't just fall into your lap. You have to really go out and fight for them and look for them. So that's another thing. I think I'm not aggressive, but I like to
determined, shall we say determined?
We'll say that.
Yeah. Great. And I also noticed, said you had that exhibition in York recently.
Yes.
What was that all about?
That was, honestly, it was one of the proudest things I've ever done, just to be recognised, because what it was is I applied last year for this Raw Talent award programme, which was basically, obviously it's not just textiles, it's all disciplines across art and craft. And it was for emerging artists just starting out in the business, giving you sort of a bit of a launch pad almost to get this show, because shows are very expensive.
Yes.
So it was sort of an introduction to an actual retail show where you'd be selling your work to the public.
Brilliant.
And it was also, I'd get the business mentoring and support as well.
Oh, well, that's worth a lot too, isn't it?
Well, that's almost worth more than the actual show itself to me personally.
Yeah.
So I applied, never thought I'd got anywhere, and then a few weeks later found out I'd been shortlisted. Then I had an interview. I thought my interview went terribly. I liked any of my work, and then found out that I was chosen as one of the 12 to actually win the award. So that was a huge...
Fantastic. So that's 12 nationwide, is it, across all sorts of creative industries?
It was open across, the whole of the UK, really. Obviously, the show itself is in Yorkshire, but there's other people who actually applied from, Scotland, down south, from all over. So, and that just showed me that they recognised my textiles as being more than just a craft. It was in the fine art world, which is something I'm constantly pushing towards.
Yes, and that's a comment that several other guests have made as well, and are pushing. Dion Swift, she's particularly pushing into the art world, and is having success in doing that. Again, it's a different medium, a different artistic medium, but let's think that it's any less either.
Exactly. No, and I think that's the battle that every textile artist faces, to be honest. But to have that recognition from professionals who believed that my work was original, they liked it, and that it could be successful was a huge boost to my confidence, as you can imagine.
Well, I'm not surprised. That was fantastic. And I saw some pictures of you on your stand as well, looking really happy. So, yeah.
I was. It was a lot of hard work, and a lot of tears and bloody fingers and everything else. But, it all came together and really paid off, and I had a really good experience. So it was fantastic.
Brilliant. Okay, so from that high point then, have you got any stories that you might want to share with us, Jessica, of when something probably didn't go quite as planned? Maybe we could even call it a disaster. And what did you learn from that experience?
Oh, I think I have many disaster in terms of, when I'm always starting out, having a bit of an experiment. There's always materials I think are going to be fantastic to work with.
Yeah.
And then they just don't work out. I've done stuff with metal where I've done these huge pieces of work, and then the metal's so heavy they just fall off.
Oh.
Or I did some pieces. I had some pieces in a gallery a while back with makeup sponges on.
Yes.
And they must have put the makeup sponges in the window, because when they sent me some of the pieces back, it had completely deteriorated off the front. And that doesn't do that just, by having it in... Well, obviously, most people keep textiles out of the direct sun, but they obviously had them.
Yes.
Which is slightly annoying, because now that piece is ruined. I
Yes.
can't really, sell it, etc. But they just obviously hadn't been careful enough. But just shows you that some people just don't know how to look after textiles properly.
That's very true. So yes, and it is a bit of a learning curve, isn't it, with what the sun's going to do things. So
exactly, which is why I've started putting pieces behind glass in terms of preserving more of an archival quality.
Yes.
Just to protect it a bit more, because some of the materials that I dye can be quite delicate.
Yes.
And especially you don't know if somebody purchases that piece of artwork, you don't know how careful they're going to be.
Yes.
And I want that to last as long as it can, and
yes,
a long time if it's an expensive piece.
So you've learned, therefore, that not everybody knows how to look after textiles, and that too much metal on things, weighs a lot and makes it fall to bits.
So either that, or when you're lugging stuff around to different exhibitions, very good arm muscles.
And that's something else, isn't it? That when you start off designing your pieces, you're not really thinking about the practicalities of folding it all up and lugging it around to exhibitions and how heavy it is. So yeah, another learning point. And that's the key thing, though, isn't it, with all of this? It's what do you learn out of it, really? That's the very important thing. So now, moving on, therefore, from those to those dreaded UFOs, those unfinished objects lurking around in backs of cupboards. Do you have any of those, Jessica? And do you think you'll ever finish it? Now, of course, you're a lot younger than a lot of the people I speak to, and we've got years and years of these damn things lurking around. So what have you got lurking?
I'm pretty good. If I start something, I don't think I've actually had anything that I haven't finished.
Right, brilliant.
Or what I would do is I have samples. I have boxes and boxes of samples, which I use a lot in my own workshops as demonstrative, pieces. So if a piece isn't working, I will cut it out and make a sample.
Right.
I don't put anything to waste. I think that's easier than having something that's half done. It can be half done, but it's still a working sample in my eyes, so I still utilise it.
Yeah, and that's a good way of looking at it. It's a sample. Yeah. It's showing where it is in the process. Yeah, exactly. So, which I think, especially when you're doing workshops and so forth, as you say, that's quite handy anyway, isn't it, to see that? Because it's like I like to see a lot of the work in progress shots on Instagram, Facebook and stuff, because it's fascinating to see how the piece has been built up.
Yeah, and often, to be honest, people seem to be more attracted to work in progress than they are to actual finished pieces. Again, because I think it's that little insight into how something is created that people are just attracted to and drawn to. Yes,
and that's back to talking about your work, because it also gives you things to talk about, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You can talk about, explain a process, or people can see where you're at with something. And to be honest, I think it's easier to talk about where you're at with something than go, da-da, it's finished, whoopee, isn't it lovely?
I want to demonstrate as well the idea of the time, and a lot of my pieces are layered, so they look completely different when I put a first layer down than when I actually build up the final layer of stitch.
Yes.
So it's sort of different imagery throughout the process. So just showing something as an end product wouldn't suggest all of the things that have gone into it.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, good. So no UFOs lurking around in cupboards. Well done.
Yeah, not yet.
Oh, yeah, not yet. Was that not yet, I heard?
Yes.
Yeah, you've got plenty of time to go yet to creating those. Right, and you've kind of already talked about how, kind of getting booked up. But what about the saying of beware of long-distance elephants? It's those items that seem so very far away when you agree to do them, but they slowly creep up on you, and suddenly there they are, looming large, a huge elephant in the room. So how do you manage your distant elephants, Jessica? How do you keep track of your projects and your time and keep yourself organised, but still able to keep that creative juice flowing?
I think it's quite difficult, but for me personally, if I have a plan and a structure and something to work towards, I work much more productively than when I don't.
Right,
So
yeah.
I like to be busy because it means that I get stuff done,
Yes.
which is probably an interesting way of working because, I don't know, the stress makes me work better, makes me work faster. Not faster, but more productive, definitely. I mean, when a whole part of doing the Raw Talent program was learning to structure your making and how you actually conduct yourself. And so I was taught how to make different plans. So I've got, like a month plan, a 3-month plan, I've got a year plan, a 5-year plan. I have all these different plans that I've printed out, stuck to my studio walls, and I tick off when I've got stuff to do. I've got a calendar that I've got pinned up with everything that I know that I've got coming up. So I do try and be quite systematic to plan in the time that I'm going to make, to say, I have an hour a day where I do all my social media updates and my emails and things like that. And it's important to schedule that time in, otherwise it can get lost.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. Yeah, singing to my heart here. I'm Mrs. Obsessive about plans and stuff, but I find, for me personally, it's the only way I get anything done.
I need a good list. Always a good list.
Absolutely, yes. It certainly is. I really like Trello, actually. It's like a visual pin board. You can move cards and lists around. If you like lists, I bet you like Trello, because it's just, like a whiteboard with sticky notes on it. Yeah, and you can put them on there. Well, it's like that, and you organise things into lists, and then you have cards, and you can attach links to things and ideas and move things around and put dates on them. And
sounds like my sort of thing. So
and it's free.
Right.
It's fantastic. It's Trello. I love it. So it is. Even the things like your social media, you hit on a really important point there. Schedule it in, because you think otherwise, it's only 5 minutes. No, it's not. You will spend an hour updating things like that. And if it's scheduled in, then it's like, right, I'm going to go and do it. Otherwise, it's easy to say, well, yeah, I'm a bit busy, I'll do that tomorrow, etc. And then you look and 2 weeks has gone by and you haven't posted anything, and everyone's wondering where you are and stuff. So yeah, that's a really key point. And I've noticed that you're getting more into running workshops and so on. So I guess that's something else where you'd be looking forward and planning ahead now with workshops. How far in advance are you planning those now, Jessica?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I've got stuff planned for 2019, to be perfectly honest, already.
Wow.
You do have to work so ahead of time, particularly in art. I mean, when I used to work in fashion, you work 2 years in advance in terms of trends. And obviously, I find some of the time I work 2 years in advance here. I mean, I've had stuff booked in that's coming up in 2018 that felt like it was miles away, and now all of a sudden it isn't.
And there's that elephant. Yeah, exactly.
Because I'm doing, one thing I'm starting next year is a lot of talks.
Right.
So I'm doing a lot of talks about my work and my journey, and obviously using unusual materials, etc. And alongside that is the workshops. I mean, most workshops I managed to book myself up to the end of this year a few years ago, so that was sorted. So it's now thinking about next year, and it's just giving people enough time to organise things. If you're planning a weekend, people are very busy, so it's making sure they have the space to come along, and it's getting my venue sorted, because I've recently moved over to Leeds from the coast, so obviously it's more urban area, there's more opportunities for different venues, etc., and places to do things, but again, it's just organising and sorting them out. But no, I really love the workshops, and I have some fantastic students, and it's just so nice to be able to share some of the techniques and for other people to enjoy them as much as I do. I suppose it's very, very sort of rewarding to do.
Yes, I should imagine that is as well. So, and you, of course, have done what I've done in reverse. I worked for Leeds for many years, then went to France, and then escaped to the coast out here at Horns. I didn't need to be in Leeds anymore, but as you say, for you, it's probably a better move in terms of just generally being there and access to materials and all the rest of it. So,
and it is for my work as well, because I find what I do is quite contemporary, it's quite urban.
Yes.
Therefore, it suits galleries that are located in cities much better, and I sell much better in cities than I do rurally.
Right.
And I think that's just the context of the work and what it is. If I did stuff that was a lot more, I have done stuff in the past that's a lot more floral or bit more realistic, I suppose, and that again sells better in rural areas. So it's just depends.
That's an interesting point, though, that your location affects the kind of work that goes and sells well, which makes sense, really, doesn't it? That's not a connection anybody else has made so far. So.
And I don't think you realise it as much as you do. But again, I've been doing a lot of, discovering my customer and trying to find out exactly what sort of people want to buy my work. Sort of getting all that chemistry stuff right suddenly clicks, and then it's a lot easier to do stuff, I find. So if you have no idea, then you're a bit all over the place.
You're poking around in the dark with a stick, aren't you? You've got no idea. Again, another kind of central business thing. So that's definitely a very important point. Now, I did notice as well some of your floral work with plastic string. So that's a very urban material too, isn't it?
Yes. Now the plastic.
And that looked wonderful.
So it's, do you know the sort of ribbons, plasticky ribbon that you would put on a parcel at Christmas?
Yes.
Everywhere at the moment. So that's what I use.
Yeah.
Purely because it's a silk ribbon embroidery technique.
Yes.
Silk ribbon is ludicrously expensive.
Yes.
Quite hard to get, to be honest, now. So I wanted a material that was more accessible, and the tactility of the plastic's quite nice. It's quite crackly, layers really nicely. So I decided to have a go with that, and it works perfectly. You have to have the right base material. That's the only thing, but
yes, for it to go through. Is that the stuff as well that you like flower arranging ribbon, because that splits down really well too, doesn't it?
You could use anything. My next sort of experiment is to do that, but with like plastic bag strips or packaging strips.
Yes.
If you cut it up, it would work really nicely. So I think as long as it can go through the fabric, you could basically use anything to do ribbon embroidery. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, well, it'll be interesting to see where all that goes then. So.
And some ladies do it this week actually in a workshop, and they all loved it, and then they were all hating it by the end of the class because they were like, it looks really easy and it's actually not.
Excellent. So we've talked a bit about you're already getting things booked up for 2020 as well. So talking of other future plans then, have you got any other specific plans and projects that you want to share with us today, Jessica, as we kind of come to the end of our chat? Our chat could go on forever at this rate, but anything that you'd like to share with us specifically for plans and projects, or where we can see your work or whatever?
Obviously I would like to really push this sculpture embroidery sort of idea into creating things that are more three-dimensional, and potentially something that's more like an installation. I would love to do something like that in the future.
Right.
In terms of workshops, my big push is to do online workshops, because I'm getting a lot of requests from people all over the world who would love to do a workshop, but America or Africa or whatever.
Yeah, brilliant.
So that's another big push. But and then obviously just as many exhibitions and residencies as I can fit in. So
right. And obviously spending your time looking for those opportunities and following them up. I'm sure you'll carry on with your success in getting yourself booked up as well. So
I've got another article coming out in a magazine in January, so you'll have to look out for that when it appears. I can't say too much at the moment, but
I'm sure you can. You'll be sharing it though, won't you, when it's out?
I will.
Brilliant.
So, I'm excited about that. Yeah.
Cool. Well, do you know what, Jessica? Thank you so much for sharing your stitchery story with us today. It's been absolutely fascinating finding out more about you and about your art, and particularly the business development aspects of what you're doing to grow your practice and to grow your business is something that I've particularly found interesting as well, because that's more of my background as well. So my textile art is very much my hobby, but it's very much a lot of parallels between developing a business regardless of what the medium of that business is. So yeah, good on you for that. Now, as I mentioned right at the start, if you want to find out more about your work, the best place for people to go is your website, isn't it, Jessica?
Yes, I link all my social media, etc. It's all linked to my website. There's also my newsletter if anyone's interested in learning about new workshops and events, etc. But it's all on the website. Yeah.
Fantastic. And then, as we've said, Jessica is on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, so you can go and find her on your social media addiction of choice. Say I particularly love Instagram for all of this, and say I will be sharing the show on there as well. So there we are. I think that's about it. Thank you so much, Jessica. That's a pleasure speaking to you, and I wish you all the best for your very busy upcoming years.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you for having me. It's been lovely just to have a chat, and hopefully everyone's as interested as I think.
Believe me, the people do find these interesting, and I've had some really nice feedback from people about how much they love these episodes. Just a little bit of a plug there. If you all want to share it to death, then go ahead, and that would be lovely. Thank you so much. And look out for Jessica as well. So there we are. I think that's about it. Thank you very much, Jessica. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Cheers. If you liked this episode and want to hear more, then please join the Stitchery Stories fan club so you can get an email when a new episode is released. It's a quick and easy way of listening and of keeping up with any news and offers from our lovely guests. Please visit stitcherystories.com to join the fan club. Of course, if you have iTunes, then subscribe there to automatically get new episodes, and why not leave us a review and rating whilst you are there. So that is the end of our Stitchery story for today. So keep stitching, keep smiling, and keep creating your very own Stitchery stories.